Welcome to Shero Live, hosted by Beth Shero, CEO and co-founder of Shero Commerce. Joined by special guest, Gavin McKew, Director of Shopify Practice at Shero Commerce.
Welcome everybody to the Shero Live. I'm Beth Shero, the CEO and co-founder of Shero Commerce. We have an exciting talk today to talk about how things are shifting in e-commerce. A lot of things are in motion. The year started off pretty quickly. Lots of exciting things to talk about, and it will be focused with some updates around the Shopify Winter editions. We're not going to dive deep into that topic because a lot of people have already, but we did want to call out some key things that we think will be influencing how you should do your strategy, how you should think about your goals for the year and kicking off 2026. So we'll have Gavin that's joining me again, which is super exciting. He's the director of Shopify Practice at Shero. So he has a lot to talk about with this topic as well. So we'll be having him join in a couple minutes. And just to kick off the year, we were at NRF. We did a great event with Bloomreach. And it was just really great to partner with them to meet some new brands, meet with partners, and connect with existing clients of Shero and see where everybody's at starting the new year. So lots of exciting things happening around NRF, and it was great to be there. And then coming up, we're actually planning a big on-site here in upstate New York for our global team. They'll be joining us and talking about strategy and how we can serve you all better. And kicking off the year, I think it's just a great opportunity for us all to come together and collaborate. And we have some great partners that will be joining us. Revo will be there, Bloomreach, Shopify, Patchworks, and Athos. So we'll have some great insights coming out of that and excited to kick off this conversation. Let's welcome Gavin.
Hi,
Hey,
Beth.
Gavin, how are you doing today?
Very well. How are you? Great to be here.
Yes. For everybody new, why don't you talk about your role at Shero and all of the things that you love about Shopify and AI at a high level?
Yeah, so
Loaded question.
yeah, essentially my role at Shero is to serve the clients to make sure that we're getting the best practice essentially out of Shopify, doing things in the correct way, solutioning the problems that they have. I think around the things that I'm excited about, I think it's the velocity of shipment within Shopify, the velocity of shipment across tech. And on top of that, I think the layer above that is all things AI, which I'm sure we'll get into.
100%. Yes. Well, thanks for joining. And I know you just did a podcast in December to talk about the winter editions. If anybody saw it, I'm sure you got a lot of good insights out of that. And so we wanted to take a little bit of a different approach, right, Gavin, to help people see what they need to do different from a goals and strategy perspective. And we're going to be talking about 3 shifts that are reshaping commerce. And I've been talking to some people that even say that right now commerce is in such a unique position that it's almost like a big change is about to swing, right? So we're going to be talking about that. Not in the granular detail, but trying to give you a little bit of a heads up of what's actually practical and happening now and what to look out for, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Exactly. And then we will also be giving suggestions on things that brands can actually start implementing and thinking about, and how they can support their teams and just to be better prepared with all these things that are happening. And it's just, I think every day, I mean, we were even chatting yesterday and there was a new update today. So like we are even feeling this flux of change. So to expect brands to know it all and keep up with it, I think is quite hard. So we want to make sure we're ahead of it and letting you all know things to think about, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of quick learning, a lot of quick R&D. We do that all day.
Yes. I don't think Gavin ever sleeps. That's how you do it.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
And just, welcome again, everybody, if you're just joining. I think this talk in particular is important for brands that are scaling on Shopify, or if you're a B2B brand or a hybrid e-commerce brand and you're thinking about Shopify, we'll have some tidbits about B2B. And then just general like road mapping, planning strategy for 2026. If you're in that process now, the things you'll be able to walk away will help inspire you, I think, to think about what your plans are for the year. So should we dive into the shifts that we're observing?
Yeah, I think that's probably best.
Okay. So we see that commerce becomes agent driven. I know there was a lot of buzz last year about agentic commerce, and we're going to dig into what that means this year and how much different it is. And then second, how decisions move faster than teams. Everything's expected to move at a warp speed. We've been feeling that pressure for quite some time, but I think it's even accelerating faster, and things that are impacting that and how you can try to get ahead of it. And then B2B. So from a Shopify perspective, they've been trying to work on features around B2B, and we see in this latest Winter's edition, this has evolved, and there's some new updates and how the agentic kind of plays with B2B and all that. So those are our main shifts that we're identifying for this year. Obviously, there's a lot of other things happening, but we wanted to highlight these because we think they connect well with the release that Shopify had in December, and just kind of getting you thinking in a different way, and also getting you up to date on what's transpiring like every day now at this point. So shift number one. Whew, it's loaded. This is a big section for us, right, Gavin?
Indeed. Huge.
If you haven't looked at the Winter's editions, go check it out, because even if you maybe aren't super technical, it's fun to even just read through and see how interactive it is. I guess I would say that, and you'll see some of their images throughout our presentation here. But with this first shift, with commerce becomes agentic driven, we're really seeing the shift. Like, I think at the end of last year, people were definitely starting to buy through AI, but like, were they actually buying, or were they just researching? Like, seeing that pattern of how customers find and discover you is evolving so rapidly. And how is Shopify enabling this to make it easier to actually check out in these other places that people are starting to use to find you, right? I don't know, Gavin, do you want to add anything else to that?
No, I think that's right. I mean, I think last year, agents was a bit of the buzzword. There was a lot of things kind of going on, but essentially what's really happened in the last few months certainly is the framework and the protocols and the things that are needed to build the rails around what this is going to look and work like are really the things that have made the difference here. Because now, from a technical standpoint or a development standpoint, it's now possible to see how that can work across app development, web development, anything that it essentially touches. So I think that's been probably the biggest thing, that the Pandora's box has been opened, and it can now be seen how that's going to work, which is great. I think also as well, it's important to recognize that even now, we're even still at the early start of this, in regards to, we're currently talking about anything that's agent driven. And I think when people talk about agents, they're essentially talking about singular agents. So an agent that really represents the buyer on this side. So the buyer essentially asks for something, or find me a product, search for me a price, find me an availability of an item. And essentially that's an agent working on behalf of the buyer. And I think that's kind of stage one, essentially. And I think it gets much more interesting, probably a little bit further down the line, when the agents don't just act on behalf of the buyer, they act on behalf of the seller intentionally, and they serve their purposes. So I think even though we seem like we have this kind of, it's still very, very early. Nobody's certainly behind. Everybody feels like they're behind. Certainly brands do, but there's plenty of time to catch up on this. But the direction of travel is becoming more clear.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And Shopify is really positioning themselves at the forefront and Google and collaborating with Google, which I'm teasing a little bit for what we're going to talk about, to make this as seamless as possible. I mean,
Mm.
before we dig into that though, I think one of the questions that comes up a lot is like, how do brands prepare for this, right? Like it's a lot of noise. It sounds very exciting or maybe terrifying in some cases. Like kind of what I would like us to achieve is like demystifying it a bit and like making it practical. So like you can walk away being like, okay, this is less scary. And what do I need to do today? Right.
Yeah.
So what agentic ready looks like in practice? I know you had a lot of thoughts about this.
Yeah. Yeah, essentially, yeah. I mean, I think you just kind of have to look at what do we know as answer engines and what are the agents doing to get those answers. So, and there's a bit of misconstruing of what an agent is and what an answer engine is. Just to explain to listeners, obviously, an answer engine is a ChatGPT, a Claude, a Gemini, a Perplexity, and essentially users ask questions to that. And the job of that answer engine essentially is to give the best results within what that is. So whatever the query is. Now, those queries could be research queries, but in this particular instance, we're talking about commerce queries. People who
Yeah.
are looking to do either transact or research about commerce. And from that position, they need to understand what problem it is that you solve. And in
Yes.
order for them to better understand the problem is that you solve, that could be a dress for Friday night's dinner. That could be a new mop for the bathroom. It could be a new set of cutlery for the kitchen. It could be anything, essentially. But the problem that you're trying to solve really lives within your data. And that is kind of point one. And I think what it really looks like in practice is very, very structured data, complete data, answering all of these queries to think of what that looks like. Um, a little bit less, I suppose, salesy, I would say to a degree. Salesy data is kind of a little bit forgotten by agentic. It recognizes these agents recognize that that's a sales tactic as opposed to a function or a practical reason as to why to buy that product. So it's much more about think about it in terms of product specs. I think a little bit more is probably a good strategy, or problems that the product solves. That's kind of point one. We could do a whole episode on just the data structure
We
setup, and we'll
could.
get a little bit more into that. Um, yeah, and this is to want to point out this doesn't take away anything on how brands currently automate or provide this data. So essentially, every order is handled differently. They get to the query of finding out what they need through a different route. It's not static keywords of 2 or 3 major keywords that essentially get served at the top of a search engine. It's a much more granular level of the problem is solved most easily by that. Now, obviously, there are still some search ranking factors used by these engines. It's not, SEO isn't dead in regards to
No,
the
not
ru-
at
the
all.
rules and the games are still there. It's just there's some other rules that live on top, and those rules are kind of touching on the other points. So I think it's the predictive part of that automation path, and I think essentially this is the discovery section of e-commerce. It's kind of like how do people discover that section and where do they find what they're looking for. So it's the layer between the discovery and providing that discovery. And yeah, and human interventions still matters.
Yeah.
It matters.
I don't
It
want
matters now.
people thinking that you're not going to have any connection, right? Because I think there's a
Yeah,
lot of value to having the right human connection to things. We've already seen it where chatbots give terrible responses.
of course. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's you. We have to remember it's as bad as it's ever going to be in this regards to the quality of AI. It's only getting better from now on. So you do have to be mindful that it's constantly shifting. But right now, there's certainly a need for human intervention on certain elements of this.
Yeah, and like, we were talking about this yesterday, like this is just the beginning. Like this will continue to evolve and change and like what you need to do will be different, right? As things mature and evolve. So And no matter
Yeah,
what you do, making sure your product descriptions and the trust level that you provide people in general, like your reviews and like what people say about you on forums, like no matter what you do, that's still valid and important, right?
exactly. I mean, we're exactly. It's hugely important. We've been testing internally with the growth team at Shero around what these actually look like and what this can serve and what that data and what the messaging should be. So essentially, there's a lot of R&D to see how this works. And it isn't going to work the same universally across all answer engines as well. Think of them as search engines. So they have collective reasons, but we've been working on what that messaging needs to really look like in order to succeed. And I think with that in mind, and again, this is also new to everyone, how can you surface that data? How can you get that data in? And also not just what should that data actually look like? Does it prefer more natural language? Does it prefer more salesy
Mhm.
language? Does it want robust text? Does it? And I think this is very almost niche dependent. You know, if you sell very product specific, specification heavy products, let's say like electronics or something that's
Right.
computers, that's a very different serve to kind of serving the, you know, the high end fashion niche and how that messaging works. So there are some niche specific items that kind of will work well within certain niches. We're currently trialing these out across a few different verticals, see how this works best.
Yeah, that's a good shout out because just think of like how discovery is evolving, right? Like we don't just search a very specific thing now. We're like trying to search for solving a problem, which is a very different conversation. And not always, but like I'm just kind of
Uh,
talking through the scenarios, right?
yeah,
So when you think of that, like the intent of like, okay, I need a new water filter versus like, I want something that makes me feel fabulous. It's a very different conversation, right?
yes,
So
and the
that's
content I think that lives if you think about agentic discovery is a little bit more conversational in regards to it's more streamlined with what you do. When you search for something, you don't write paragraphs and paragraphs 15 times and get a
right.
result. And you don't necessarily essentially start with the query that you want. You can say something like, I've got some mold in my bathroom. How do I get rid of this mold? And then
Yes.
essentially that conversation then it kind of leads into a product as opposed to I'm looking to fix that with the problem that I need. So it's kind of almost self-serving, but the problem that occurs because the product is required, the answer engine will know to supply that product in the end at the point that it makes sense to. So it's a lot more conversational. There's a lot more context. I mean, SEO terms, I think everything's now long tail. You know, long tail
Right.
key search terms. It's fully long tail, but it's long tail backed with AI and knowledge and then surfacing. So this kind of lives on top of that. And I think that's kind of more how people will shop. It won't be, it vastly depends on the type of shopper. If you are shopping with intent, I need a dress for Friday night to look fabulous. That's a very intentful shop. But again, the second example I used in regards to I have a problem and I need it fixed, well, we could have had many conversations about are there any natural ingredients I use? Could I use this and this and this? And then none of these work. And then you come back to the same chat window, continue the conversation hours later. And then at that point it serves the product. So it's kind of it's much more a conversational discovery as opposed to a hit me in an intent discovery. But I think that gives a big opportunity for brands because you can convert those buyers that you know, right now ecom I think is a little bit has been set up a little bit for buyer intent. The only place that buyer intent doesn't really exist is on ad platforms, and that's where they try to create that intent. But this is a slightly more strategic level of intent. I think marketing teams are
Yes.
going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree. And then just before we move on to the next step of this, talk briefly about the tech stack because I know you had thoughts about this, and I think it's super valid and not something that people will have on their radar.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's kind of happening is you'll if depending on the ecosystem that you're in, lots and lots of software providers, whether they're SaaS providers, whether that's Shopify or whether it's any AI service or any type of provider, the velocity for them to ship products and ship updates is vastly increased due to them being able to code essentially within AI.
Right.
And I think with that in mind, The tech stack that lives around the website, and I include apps in that tech stack. There's a single website, and then they either have apps or they have ecosystems that touch it, ERPs, CRMs, PIMs, and whatnot. As this evolves and that data needs to be fundamentally put inside and given to the answer engines, it is very important that you review that the tech that you have installed on your website, that they are shipping updates regularly. Would be I'm wearing my CTO head now, Beth.
Yes, switch your hat.
Is that switch my hat on? I would, if I was a CTO for a brand right now, I would be reviewing the everything that touches data, essentially, to check that either one, they're going to be in some way allowing me to access that data so I can give it to the answer engines through some means. And two, that they're shipping quickly, essentially. I think you can tell a lot by a company's change log. It doesn't necessarily mean what it writes, just by the amount that they ship. I would be very mindful if I had a critical piece of infrastructure that stored a lot of data, and I thought I would want to get that data in. I mean, there's lots of different options, but that could be feed software. It could be the product itself. It could be a subscription app. It could be any part of tech that touches your site, essentially. And just review that these guys are up to date, and it looks like they're on the ball with this, and they're shipping updates around this as the infrastructure and frameworks change.
Yeah, and when we say ship, we mean they deliver updates to.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, just for clarity, because
just for clarity, everyone. When I say ship, I mean essentially they release some updates for you for the users to use.
Yes, absolutely. And transitioning to the next slide is actually what Shopify has shipped or released to some of its customers. It's not fully out to everybody yet, right, Gavin?
Yeah, it's not out to everyone. I think it's dropped in the last few days.
Yeah.
It's out. But this
So
is
the unified catalog for agentic storefronts. We were hearing about it, but here it is. You want to talk about it?
yeah. I mean,
Or do you want
I've
to
only
bring it
really
up?
yeah, I did bring it up.
Okay,
I
cool.
think around this in the sense of this is particularly for Shopify brands, but this is for any brand on any platform at all, really, in the sense to have a look to see if these things exist within that platform. But this is the first insight that we have on how this data is going to be essentially be able to be shared from platform to these answer engines using UCP, which we'll get onto later. And that's the protocol that sends this data. So what this is showing is you can see that the source is from Shopify and that it's attributing title, description, and category. And underneath that, you get a lot of options to make sure that your current store, whether that's tags, meta objects, meta fields, are also being served. So if you have variables of products, so you have a t-shirt in 4 colors, and it's listed on one particular PDP page, that those variants and those product listings are shared with the answer engines across all 4 variants of that particular item. So this is one of the examples that I mentioned earlier. Actually, I tested this earlier on a add variant selector, and one of the providers that was on a demo store that I had worked fine right out the box with a third party. And then I tested it on another one with another provider, and it didn't. So what would that mean in real terms is that provider will be able to give data to these answer engines, and this other provider will not. So that could have a really big impact depending on your store. It would singularly just get a single SKU up and not the variants that live within the SKU. So essentially, you might only be telling the answer engines you sell red t-shirts when you sell them in green, blue, and black.
Right.
So it's not so much data. This is almost a mapping, essentially, of what that data is going to be fed in through UCP. This is only in preview right now. Some of the answers are kind of going on the front. So this is it's an open preview. You can test this on. It lives within sales channels on Shopify. That's how Shopify views this from their side.
Okay, so it's a different channel to them.
Yeah, it's treated a little bit of Shopify like kind of you would have a Google channel or a Meta channel or any other channel that you kind of connect into, or a POS channel.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And then I haven't managed to see this in the preview, but I have seen it on some of the slides. There should be options to turn on and turn off the different answer engines that can use this data: Copilot, Perplexity, ChatGPT, Claude. And I haven't yet seen the options that live on those individual channels, but I have seen them within the sort of master element of default listings before it gets to those channels.
Yeah, no, I think this is big. And, we're going to talk about it a little bit, but the UCP and the data that you can push to it now, I think is maybe for some use cases a bit more limited, but I think as it evolves, they will extend this, right? So that it can be used for more use cases. Because I know that I've been asked that.
Yeah, I've been asked this a bit as well. Is essentially, and we'll get onto this point shortly, but this is essentially e-commerce's way to speak to these answer engines right now, but it still has to run through what's called UCP in a protocol. We're going to get onto that later.
Yeah.
But the point about this is that there is still a level of restriction, I would say, in terms of what the UCP can give to the answer engines.
Correct.
It's not a restriction in the sense that that it's going to block anything particularly major. It's mainly a from a roadmap perspective of the maturity of UCP. UCP is right at its first volume 1. That's what we're playing with. But there's going to be lots of updates, I think, within that in the next few months.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've said it a lot, and we're kind of transitioning to talk about the UCP, making sure you're ready and aware of these things. Doing the best you can to get your data cleaned up now is important so you can be found, right? And
Yes.
UCP, here it is, so to speak. It just launched at the beginning of January, right? Big update. Shopify partnered with Google on this, really creating this protocol around making it easier for the systems to connect for agentic discovery and e-commerce and other things, right? So big update here. I mean,
Yeah.
go
So
ahead.
I
You
think
get into that.
I'll try and explain it to brands essentially, to non-techies, so they kind of understand what this is. If you kind of UCP isn't something that I think brands need to be massively aware of it as an entity, but its functions are very important. UCP is essentially a way for data to speak to answer engines, and there is a number of things that run through this. There's a number of layers that this runs through. It isn't quite as easy as if you kind of look at how brands might run this now. They might run a product feed into Google Merchant Center. They essentially give that data raw. They send that up in a feed. It might be on a cron, it might be API'd. This is a little bit of a different way to do it. There's a few more layers to UCP and the protocols that work in agentic, because there needs to be some rules essentially that agents are allowed to do and not allowed to do, as opposed to I've given a feed. So UCP is really interesting, but also I think for us as an agency, Beth, kind of we'd seen it at ACP earlier on, and it was a little bit closed door. And then when we seen UCP, it kind of all twigged at Shero, where we were all like, yeah, this is where it's going. This is where we need to lean in on, and then we can start building things around it and testing out things for our brands and our merchants. So yeah, I think that's kind of UCP in a nutshell. I think we've got a few other slides on this.
Yes, we go to the next one. That kind of, I mean, this is a bit technical, of course, but I think it gives a good visual.
It is, but there's a couple of key parts to this that I think I'm more interested in. And UCP has 2 areas, I think, that are different to using standard product fields. And that is, it has a thing, and I mentioned this earlier, it has a function called capabilities. And capabilities are essentially things that it's allowed to do.
Right.
It's allowed to add to checkout. It's allowed to search my product, like the capabilities of what it's allowed. Now, these are currently set in UCP. So I think there's about 8 capabilities. There's more for the roadmap. And then there is, so we've got capabilities, and then we've got extensions. And they almost live on top of capabilities. So capabilities more model-esque, and extensions are mainly based, I think, for any provider that needs the extension to get into that capability. So all the app providers and everyone within the space right now is essentially making their tool UCP correct. So brands are on Shopify brands, but on lots of other platforms are essentially many times kind of already connected to UCP. Check with your SaaS platform. So they're kind of part of that start of this funnel. But app providers and development providers, they might come in on this funnel at a later stage. They might just want to know the capability factor and make sure that their capability is going to be surfaced within a answer engine. So therefore, what function they provide can be provided within the answer engine, and it can also talk to whatever provider wherever it needs to pull data from. So
Do you
it's
have an example of that, like that you could foresee happening?
of capabilities. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
plenty. Like some of the bundle rules, there's a bundle capability that's been dropped. But if you look at how bundles work, there's so many different types of bundles.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different bundle types. It's like buy two get three free, buy five for $50. There's a very kind of the whole bundle rule side is kind of there. There's also, as well as there's a setup within depending on the current brand setup and how they kind of currently have products listed, and depending on the niche, is very dependent on if that capability would work out of the gate. And if their bundle provider essentially can plug in to UCP and work as it does. All bundle providers, I am sure right now, are trying to scratch and work out whether they can do this, and probably lots of them have already
No
built it.
pressure. No pressure.
No pressure. No pressure at all.
Okay, so why are we talking about this? Why does this matter to brands? Obviously, like we said in the beginning, things are shifting quickly, right? So, I mean, I think the biggest benefit, and excuse the typo there, for UCP is creating like the guardrail, so to speak, is the way I like to think about it. So, like to your point, like then now all of the tech can start to align with like this is the best practice, so to speak, of how we should do this. Just making the checkout easier, changing and evolving discovery even further, and then just making it clear that what you put out there will affect, what agents find. And when I was, a big question that I think has come up a lot is, well, who owns the data? And when I was looking at the documentation from Google, they do say brands remain the merchant of record and retain full ownership of customer data and relationships. I'm just saying that's what they put on the website. But what's your take, Gavin? What else would you add about why this is so critical for brands?
I think there is quite a big assumption, I think, to a degree, that the discovery phase of potential buyers is going to shift drastically to answer engines. Like that's assumption one.
Yeah.
If nobody starts using answer engines to buy anything or look for commerce, then this is all where it needs to be anyway. But I think that assumption is pretty likely. The amount that these guys are growing, the amount of usage and growth that's happening. I type 1,000x more into an answer engine than I do in any search engine today. Yes, I'm techie, but I think I can say the same about friends and family who aren't techie. They're using it for lots of reasons. So it's kind of a natural progression. So it's pretty obvious, I think, that that'll happen. And essentially, when that discovery phase switches from search engines, let's say, or any other discovery position, then this is going to take a big section of that discovery marketplace of where buyers will look to purchase. And then your job is to grab that attention and make sure they buy.
Yeah, 100%. And then what does this enable? So, to your point, customers can buy from anywhere, right? Like we're not listing or telling them they have to go to your website, they have to go to Amazon or whatever it might be, right?
Exactly. One of the big updates, it's not in the first update on UCP, but one of the big updates that's already on the roadmap for the version 2. They've got a specific roadmap. Anyone could look at ucp.dev and it'll give you the documentation on what UCP is actually doing if anyone is really interested. but essentially there's a roadmap there of some of the capabilities that it's going to be able to deliver. And one of those is actually you can use multi-cart. So you can essentially, you could you could you could buy your let's use my mop analogy of I need a new mop and I now get my mop and then I want to buy my detergent and I then query and I get surfaced another brand by another product. I could in the same checkout essentially, and this is still in the roadmap so we can't test it, is you could essentially buy the mop and the detergent within the same transaction from two different merchants, and each
Yeah.
separate merchant would be pinging both orders. So I think it enables those types of transactions that have just not even really been possible to be thought about. I think we'll see a lot of collabs between brands. Huge.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big one if you think about agentic and like the different experiences people will use it for, right?
Exactly. And as well, I think like even where it plugs into users, if we look at like, I don't know, the big four AIs, so whether we big 4 or 5 AIs, Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, if you look at those, I think where even if there's apps that are surfacing shopping transaction items, so somebody makes a new deal app and it's on the App Store and it's about the daily deals within mops. It's the best mop and deals in the world. Essentially, they can plug that into UCP from their side and then surface and sell directly on there. So the actual place to buy can increase, but naturally by the apps. So if they plug into UCP on within those apps and you surface that data through UCP to those answer engines, then it allows more opportunities to sell on more surfaces as those surfaces are built. Now, lots of these aren't made and they don't exist, but they will. There'll be lots of niche verticals of places of where you can buy within certain products and certain brands and certain problems that people are looking to fix. So it's getting the data in there essentially, and then it enables people to buy anywhere. You can do a lot of buying by voice. I think will happen quite regularly. You click a button. I know you can do this with Amazon Alexa now, but Amazon Alexa feels like 20-year-old tech right now, and it's probably what 6-year-old.
So sad.
I know it does, and it's crazy because like it's crazy. It's crazy. My little boy always comes up and he's like, Dad, can I speak to chat? And I put it on my phone and I put it on. And he's asked me many times, but why can't I just ask chat to do that for me? And like the 7-year-old's mind is exactly, it's the right question to ask because, and there's plenty of people trying to fix this. We're going to, it's not in the not too distant future, this will be fixed. People will be shopping by voice. They'll just be asking it to buy me that mop.
That's a good shout out because I was just thinking like the way people are thinking of this, it's inspired from what we know today. And I think the younger generation, like your son, for example, don't have those things in their mind of like how it should work. So they're going to think of it in a totally different use case. And it's going to change so much, right?
Yeah, he's hypercritical on tech. He'll see a piece of tech that we still see as like very. I won't name it out, but it ends in B and starts with E, and he'll see something like that, and he's like, Dad, why does this look 25-year-old? And he just cannot work out why it looks that way, but everybody uses it, or it works a particular way. Why do I have to do this click?
It just
why do you have to do 20? His mind is it just does. That's just how it is, and I have to explain this to him. But his mind as a 7-year-old, and I see this across like some of my cousins and my family that are a little bit older than Fred, that essentially they're questioning why the tech works in certain ways. And they're right. They're absolutely right. We've just never had the means to deliver within these types of environments. This is going to give so many opportunity to brands, merchants, app developers, web developers. There's so much opportunity to build new products around what's now available. It's exciting.
Like if you think of how many people are on Shopify, they will all have access to this. So it really levels the playing field. You don't have to do anything crazy to get going, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then Shopify's been a lot more open recently in the sense of like everyone's now got access to Catalog API directly. You've got all the new GraphQL stuff. There's an entire infrastructure layer that you could build on. There's so many opportunities for brands merchants, app developers to tap into this new framework and this new ecosystem to build new exciting ways to shop or to find and discover products. It's not going to be just the kind of regimented channels I think we've had for a few years. You know, we've had Google Ads for 20 years, and the last 10 years it's been Meta Ads, and they're
Yeah,
kind of been the main two
game is
acquisition channels.
changing, right?
Yeah, TikTok's there a bit. Yeah, the game's changing, and the key thing is to be in the game and the game isn't to win the game. You know, the game is to keep playing, and to keep playing, you need to be in. You
In the
need
right
you need to
places,
be
right?
in the right place. Yeah, that's it. The aim is to keep
Do
playing.
you want to highlight any other items from the roadmap before we wrap up this section?
I think we've got I know that there's definitely loyalty programs going to be built into this that isn't currently on there. So I think that's going to be linked to like points and rewards being sent back to native fields. Related products is something that's going to be related to there. So I think that's a key call out actually, in the sense of related products on your site natively is probably a solid play, because if people are looking at buying a particular item and you've got related products to that product, I mentioned earlier the mop and the detergent. You might have the detergent, you don't want it to surface somebody else's detergent, you want it to find a related product to your mop. So that's very key. And again, very linked to the data piece. Essentially, it's a data, it's a data game there, and post-purchase tracking and returns are part of the roadmap as well.
Yeah,
There's a few
there's
others.
a lot. And we could talk for hours about this, and we will be talking more about it. But just so we have enough time to get through all the shifts, just want to wrap up this one. Of course, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. Just kind of wanted to summarize here. So make sure that people understand the benefits of what you're selling. Speed does matter. So making decisions quickly will impact your revenue, and making sure you're ready for these shifts. And then make sure the experience is clear, because an agent's not going to be able to understand certain things if it's not clear enough, I guess is the way I would express it.
True. Yeah.
And then, so, that's our biggest shift. And like, obviously there's a lot more we could say here, but just to shift gears. And again, I think we started to see this one last year with shift number 2, decisions moving faster than teams. A/B testing, throughout the years has evolved so much. And I think with Shopify, it got easier and easier to A/B test. But now with the latest update, Shopify will have its own native A/B testing, AI simulation. So this really starts to evolve how we think about testing, and that everyone will have access to this, right?
Yeah, I think this is Sim Jim, and I think I've tested this a little, and it's a really great way for brands to test what this looks like in A/B world, in A/B testing, who haven't currently done this through AI assisted. I will say this on SimGym though, and this is certainly not a critique of Shopify, but I think they do this a lot with certain app stacks within what they deliver. It seems that this initially you don't really know the gravity of how solid this app actually is going to be. They announce it, it sounds really great. It is a solid app. There's certainly nothing wrong with it, but it seems a little bit like one of those apps where they're demonstrating what is possible and why it matters, in order for somebody else to come and really make the industry leading app in this vertical, because people were not building apps by simulating AI on Shopify. So Shopify essentially somebody needs to be building this. They release this and give it away for free, and it's not a bad app. It's not terrible, it's not amazing, but it kind of demonstrates what is possible in this remit, and how there's almost a new app vertical that didn't exist.
Right. Can you just summarize for everybody, and maybe we're going to touch on it a little bit later, but what does it mean that AI is assisting simulation? Like, how does that work in practice? Like, because you said you played around with it a little bit. Is it like, can you kind of summarize it for someone that's not technical?
Yeah, so it comes up with a list of terms and a ways of shopping, and it can be I suppose it can be a little bit dumb at times, but it's essentially it's essentially trying to mimic what a person would particularly do on your side. And when it mimics what's happening on your side, it can do this multiple times over using AI to then say, this is what I think is wrong, in order for you to
Mhm.
improve in an A/B tested manner, as opposed to the way we traditionally did this in A/B testing is we would make two variants of a particular section or page or an element on a site, and you would surface that to the same amount of users, and whatever the goal was of what you were trying to achieve, if it was achieved more by one of the variant changes, you would essentially stick to that variant change. This is doing the same thing, but kind of AIs being the people as opposed to the people being AI. So you can test it a little bit beforehand.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because it's leading to the reason why we wanted to call this out is, and I've heard this a lot, like with CRO, like making sure you make decisions that don't hurt you, because that can happen in CRO, and like thinking about the bigger picture. So like really making sure that when you A/B test, you're thinking of the bigger picture, not just like granular, like how did this color affect how they converted, like thinking the experience overall, because I think sometimes that gets missed.
Yeah.
And that this AI addition into Shopify helps you test more quickly with fewer tests, right? And so, like, being really strategic about it so you don't get stupid answers, to your point.
Exactly. And I think there's almost this is like CRO when users hit the website right now. So we're talking about, I'm on a website, I need to achieve certain things, and is anything going to block me or stop me from doing that, and could it be better, essentially. And I think the kind of and this kind of syndicates a little bit into the AI piece, in the sense of the CRO. Essentially, your data is your CRO, essentially, within AI engines. So it's not different just because it's not occurring on the page. The quality of that data has a big reflection on whether your conversion rate does convert.
Yes.
And you will have to A/B test that in a very different way, as opposed to, what does a user deliver on your site? Where do they click? Is there any inflection points? What's their entry point? What's their exit page? All of those things combined. But CRO is still a massively important part, included on the entire AI piece within this as well. So I think CRO is about to become a much bigger subject matter across the whole broad, and not just as we see CRO. Shopify definitely showing us a little bit of the way of how AI can essentially simulate what users can do on the site. But I think if you eventually have simulation answers within what AI engines are asking, and how that queries and what that looks like, and
Right,
it's
right. I mean, it definitely opens a big door,
yeah, and
right?
as well, it opens a big door. And even when you kind of see how, if the objective on an answer engine is to get the user to land on a PDP because you want to give them more data, that might be the intent. The intent might not be, I don't want them to. Imagine it's a really high value product. It's a
Mhm.
£25,000 oven. No one, I say no one, it's highly unlikely someone's distinctly going to buy that right on a chat on an answer engine out of the gate, when answer engines become a thing. So what you might want to do is pull them in to the website itself, deliver
Mhm.
all the CRO and great experience on the site, and convert at that point. So it's much bigger, holistic view, and
Yes.
and the tools that are going to help and serve this are all kind of being built, because it's multifaceted now, but it's exciting.
Yeah. And the app is Sim Gym. So I think there's a wait list,
It,
right? Like
yeah,
not
there's a
everyone's
there's a
seen it.
Yeah, you can get it on the App Store, and when you install it on the App Store, it will install on your site. But when you get into the back end, you have to join the waitlist. I don't think it's far away. I think the waitlist has been opened up pretty quickly. But I think this is a really great example of some of the optimization, some of the new ways to optimize your website that potentially haven't been thought about. So I would highly recommend installing it and giving it a whirl.
Awesome. And obviously with the additions, there were so many unique things that they dropped.
Yes.
We're just calling out a few.
Okay.
And then finally, our last shift that we wanted to highlight is B2B. So, Shopify's kind of slowly brought on more B2B features, maybe resisting certain aspects of that, but I think really critical and important, like ACH payments, thinking about company management, how it connects to the POS. This is really just about streamlining that experience and giving B2B brands the tools they need to create the best experience, right?
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's the kind of shift that we're seeing to a degree. Shopify obviously comes from a B2C background and kind of pivoted more into B2B. So it's kind of it's been a little bit of the poor cousins for a number of reasons for a few years. In the last 2 or 3 years, it's drastically changed, and we're dealing with plenty of B2B brands on Shopify right now. But in the latest editions, there was 4 or 5 real critical enhancements that really kind of level it up a bit for us. Enhancements that brands and ourselves have been asking for.
Yes.
Is And I think, yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean, yeah, we
Yes.
kind of and I think there's a part of Shopify as well. Is Shopify doesn't in any way discard anything around B2B. They give a lot of the rails and a lot of the ability to do lots of these functions, but it's just nice to see when they become native and it doesn't rely on the developers to build anything around that. We built a lot of
Yes.
custom development work on B2B sites that essentially achieves a lot of the things that are already here. But it's nice when they're native and we don't have to build. Essentially, it means we can do this quicker and things work out.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
And I think just to like bring it full circle with these changes, like, I've had people ask me, how does agentic commerce play with B2B? Like UCP, is it ready for B2B? I know this is a big topic. You and I were chatting about it the other day.
I think this could have I think AI could have a bigger influence on like a bigger shift on B2B than B2C, essentially. B2C, like I think obviously from the discovery side, and it's going to change lots of things, but I think the B2B opportunity is pretty massive. There's a few things that kind of needs to get right, and there's a few there's a few protocol updates that need to come. But I think if they come in the right way, I think the opportunity for B2B brands in agentic is a bigger shift than most people recognize.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think just also seeing how the market adapts to these things. B2B tends to move a little bit slower for some things.
Yeah,
it will take time for everything to catch up, right? Like
B2B has it's a slow roll. B2B generally works on lower margins. The tech stacks are generally a lot behind B2C, so they can't move as quick. And I get it. And there hasn't really. It's hard to serve all the different uniquenesses that live around B2B sites and B2B companies across every vertical. There's been lots of improvements on that natively, but I think this is an opportunity in the agentic landscape to really get a hold of that collectively and kind of shake up the B2B space.
Yeah. And I think with newer generations coming into the space, they're already demanding more, streamlined experiences like you have on B2C. Obviously, it's not the same, but they're pushing for things, and they'll hopefully it will move certain things along a little quicker, right?
Exactly. And I think this leads back to something I said really at the start, is where agents and agents are talking to one another.
Yes.
If we're looking at this from an agent in, so I'm a brand and I'm selling something and I put that for sale and somebody purchases that through an answer engine. I think when it becomes agent to agent, so your agent and I'm the seller and I'm the seller and you're the buyer, and your agent in a B2B landscape is speaking to my agent, negotiating price, negotiating delivery times, negotiating credit terms. All of those things could occur in a very agentic landscape in like a really wonderful way. And there's so much infrastructure that could be built around there that would really, really bring B2B brands ahead of B2C brands in some features.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I just see a lot of opportunity, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, right?
It will. It will. It will.
So to show the highlights of what we talked about today, agentic commerce, big one to keep an eye on and prep for. Think about how you're testing. If you're not testing now, you can definitely get started and play around with it, right? Like I wouldn't wait to do testing. And
No.
then just thinking about the shift with B2B and having more built-in features on Shopify.
Yeah. Exactly.
So some great shifts there. And also just, as always, the Shopify editions had a tremendous amount of information. So again, go check that out because it's just even fun to like play around with the website, let alone learn about what they're doing. And then, what does this mean for this year and how you're planning? Think about minimizing your tech stack or consolidating. I think a lot of brands are already doing this, or like if things have been built custom, thinking, is that sustainable and realistic in these evolving times? Making decisions quickly, because waiting to decide if you want to go agentic, either way, start cleaning up your data, right? And just really executing as quickly as you can. And I think Shopify does a brilliant job of giving brands the tools they need to do that, right? And
Yeah.
just using
100%.
the data and the tools to like really hit the ground running. So,
Exactly.
anything else you would suggest to brands out there planning this year, how to get ahead of all these things that are happening?
I think we covered everything. I mean, there's so much more. I think the key takeaways are what you've highlighted there. I think review tech stack is probably me wearing my CTO hat there. I would definitely review what currently handles data. I think that's probably what I would say with my solution head on. So I would review each piece of my tech, whether it's an app, a CRM, a PIM, or anything else that touches your data, just to check that it's going to be okay in the agentic landscape.
Yeah. It's all going to matter. It will be interesting to see how everything just starts consolidating / connecting or breaking in the process, I guess is something to say.
Yeah, I see. I did find a few holes. I did find a few holes of circumstances that I thought, I don't think this works particularly well in this right now. But again, this is just the early version of the protocol.
Very early. Very
Very early.
Yeah.
And knowing how quickly they kind of pull this together, I think there'll be updates regularly as these kind of come to a front. There is one thing that I did want to touch on slightly, I think, and I think we missed it, or I missed it, in the sense of there are not all answer engines are the same. So when this data is given to these answer engines, and then users can buy products on those answer engines, Gemini, Perplexity, Claude, ChatGPT. ChatGPT announced that I think that it's going to charge 4% to its users. So essentially, if that channel is switched on, and I'm not quite sure if I imagine they'll just take a cut from Shopify and it'll be outside of your payouts. But essentially, it looks like ChatGPT are going to be charging 4% for transactions that you give to ChatGPT and that it transacts on as a fee. I don't think any of the other answer engines are charging out of the gate, but it's just something to bear in mind that there might be some additional cost in using this. This isn't like a free for all. I remember when Google shopping ads were free for about 5 years, and you could just upload the good old times. And you could just upload. You could just upload any feed from.
Gavin.
I know. Some of these answer engines are delivering on that. ChatGPT is not taking that approach. So, if people are on particularly slim margins, they might want to review the channels and what they charge if you're going to sell agentically. So I think that's just maybe one last thing to add.
Yeah, and also there's some buzz around ads on ChatGPT as well.
Well, of course, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, everyone's they've got to make money. Everyone's going to do ads. We've had the press conference. We've had the press release saying that it's not going to touch their answers and it's going to have no dictation and it's going to be served very nicely. We will see. We're learning as we go. We're being fed information. Our growth team's on it. They're currently putting an entire list together on how we're going to work with our merchants and our brands in a better way for these ads. I'm sure plenty of merchants want to advertise on these platforms. So if anyone is interested, do reach out. Our growth team are great. This isn't a sales pitch, but I'm just saying we are currently working on this.
We are. Yeah, it's exciting. Awesome. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining. I hope that gives you a little bit of insight. Again, there's like so much to learn and prepare for. So I hope this narrowed list just helps you kind of see through all the noise. And if you have additional questions about some of these big trends and topics that are happening, please reach out. We're happy to answer questions or support in any way possible. And Gavin, really appreciate your input. You're brilliant as always.
Thank you for
So
having me.
it's been a pleasure having you on. And I think that's a wrap for us. So thank you again for joining. I'm Beth Shero. Always be learning.